If you're thinking about buying a home in Northern Virginia, there's something that I can tell you with a high degree of confidence, and it's based not just on my real estate experience, but also on my earlier years practicing law. Most of the big mistakes that people make are completely preventable. They're not complicated. They're not things you need a PhD to understand. They're usually the result of moving too quickly, making assumptions, or not getting the right guidance early enough. When I was practicing law, I saw this pattern constantly. People didn't want to spend a few $100s up front to get advice or structure something properly. They waited until something went wrong. And then suddenly they were spending thousands, sometimes much more, trying to fix something that could have been avoided. Now fast forward into real estate. Same pattern, different setting. As a broker, I not only work with my own clients, but I also advise agents in my office. I see a wide range of transactions, what goes right, what goes wrong, and what people wish they had done differently. And what's interesting is this: most of the mistakes don't feel like mistakes when you're making them. They feel reasonable. They feel justified until later. So what I want to do in this video is walk you through the biggest buyer mistakes I see in Northern Virginia, the ones that cost people money, time, and sometimes peace of mind, and more importantly, how to think about them differently before you get there. My name is Brian Blanc. I'm a real estate broker with RE/MAX Allegiance based in Alexandria, Virginia. I've lived here in Northern Virginia for over 30 years, and I've been helping buyers and sellers here for more than 20. And because of my legal background and my role as a broker, I tend to look at these situations a little differently. I'm not just looking at what works. I'm looking at what can go wrong and how to prevent it. One of the biggest mistakes I see, and again, this mirrors exactly what I saw when I was practicing law, is waiting too long to get good advice. People will say, we're just starting out. We don't want to commit yet. We'll figure it out as we go. And I understand that instinct. But here's what really happens. They start forming opinions. They start filtering homes. They start making decisions without a framework. I worked with buyers who had already been out looking on their own for a while. They had a sense of what they liked and what they didn't like. But some of the assumptions they were making about pricing, about neighborhoods, about what mattered, were just slightly off. Not dramatically wrong, just off. And those small misalignments were starting to compound. Once we sat down and reset the framework, everything improved. But it would have been much easier if that conversation had happened earlier in the process. This is exactly what I saw while working as an attorney. People avoid early guidance because they think it's too soon. But that is actually when guidance can be its most valuable. Another mistake, and this one shows up in more subtle ways, is focusing too heavily on the purchase price and not fully understanding the true cost of ownership of the home. Because the reality is, two homes at the same price can be very different financial decisions. Here's an example. One home might have an older HVAC, an aging roof, higher property taxes, and less efficient systems. Another might be recently updated, more energy efficient, and lower ongoing costs. Same price, very different long-term experience. I worked with a buyer who was very focused on maximizing the size of the house. Let's get the most house we can for the money. That's what they told me. And that's a natural instinct. But what we talked through was this: what is this home going to cost you after you own it? Because if you stretch for size but inherit deferred maintenance, higher operating costs, you may not have made the better decision. Here's some insight. The price is just the beginning. The real question is, What does this house cost you to live in? Paying too much attention to the cosmetics. This is a mistake I see constantly. Buyers walk into a home and they immediately react to the paint color, the fixtures, the finishes, and the staging. And those things matter, but they are also the easiest things to change. Here's a contrast. What's harder to change? The layout, the location, the lot, and the structure. I've seen buyers walk away from a house because the kitchen wasn't updated. And meanwhile, the house had great bones, as they say, great location, and great long-term potential. But then these buyers pursue something more finished, but compromise in ways that matter much more. Cosmetics are emotional. Structure is strategic. And if you mix those up, you can end up making a very expensive mistake. Let's talk about inspections, because this is where a lot of nuances come in. With home inspections, there are really two mistakes: not taking the inspections seriously enough, or not understanding what the home inspection actually means. The reality is that no house is perfect. Every inspection is going to find something. The question is not, is there anything wrong? Their question is, what really matters? I've seen buyers react very strongly to relatively minor issues. And I've also seen buyers overlook things that were more meaningful. That's where experience and context really matters. And then there's the issue of contingencies. In competitive markets, buyers sometimes feel pressure to waive inspection contingencies and waive other protections. And sometimes strategically that can make sense, but it has to be informed and intentional. Not everyone else is doing it. From a legal perspective, this is where things can get real very quickly. Because once you waive certain protections, your options narrow significantly. And that's something that you want to fully understand before you make that type of decision. The house versus the neighborhood. This is one of the most important ideas that I share with buyers. You buy the neighborhood first and then the house, because the house can change. You can renovate, you can update, you can adjust, but you can't change where it is, location. I've seen buyers choose a house they love and over time realize that the location doesn't fully support their lifestyle. Commute, access, surroundings, those things show up every single day. The right neighborhood makes your life easier. The wrong one makes everything just a little bit harder. In competitive situations, buyers sometimes feel like they have to win at all costs. And that can lead to decisions like waiving contingencies, escalating price aggressively, and compressing timelines. And again, sometimes those decisions are appropriate, but they have to be grounded in understanding risk. As a broker, I've seen a lot of transactions, not just my own, but across agents in my office. And the difference between a smooth transaction and a stressful one often comes down to how well risk was understood up front. A home purchase is not just a moment. It's a position. And the buyers who tend to feel best about their decisions later are the ones who are thinking beyond today and beyond this year. They're thinking about flexibility, resale, and long-term fit. When I step back and look at all of this, from my time practicing law, to my many years in real estate, to my role as a managing broker, the biggest takeaway I have is this: most of the costly mistakes are not that complicated. They're just preventable if you slow down, ask the right questions, and approach the process with clarity. If you're thinking about buying in Northern Virginia, having the right conversations early before decisions are locked in can make a huge difference. It's something that I help people think through every day. If you want to talk through your situation, even early in the process, I'm always happy to do that. My contact information is in the description below. And if this was helpful, I have other videos where I go deeper into neighborhoods, pricing, and what life looks like across Northern Virginia.